I am the Philosophical Bachelor, and today I want to talk about what is philosophy to me. Philo Sophia, the love of wisdom. That is the answer Socrates gave when asked what philosophy is. He did not reply that it is the acquisition of knowledge or even finding out what the truth is. He could have. Those two are part of what philosophy is. Instead, he looked to the Greek etymology of the word, which captured the idea well. It is about loving something. What is that thing? Wisdom. Wisdom and knowledge are, however, not the same thing. One can know a lot of things, but that does not make one wise. But what is philosophy to me? While I agree with Socrates' answer, I think in the spirit of philosophy, that, to me, is not all that philosophy is. Of course not. It is related, inspired by, but not all I have to say about it. Otherwise, where is the pursuit so often found in love? Nonetheless, my answer is also rather simple. Philosophy asks the broadest, most general questions. Many thinkers have thought about these questions. Actually, I think we, as rational animals, cannot help it. Some may wonder, why are philosophers so troublesome, asking questions that seem to have no clear answers, like, what is being? What is a thing? What is space? What is reality? What is philosophy? How do we know? Either the answers are so obvious that they do not merit questioning, or more pragmatically, who cares? We have bigger concerns to be concerned about, but even being pragmatic is a philosophical position. You can just imagine the philosopher responding, bigger concerns like what? How do you know that those are more important concerns than our concerns? If the answers are so obvious, why can we not clearly state them? If you wondered about something that you thought you knew, if you thought about it really deeply or spoke about it with a philosopher, you may end up feeling less sure than before that you really knew it. But don't blame philosophers. I think some, if not all human beings, have at some point wondered about the most fundamental questions, like what is the point? Is there a point? A point to what? What is it that requires a point, that makes it meaningful? What is meaning? Why does it matter? Who or what does it matter to, and based on what criterion? And why should that be the criterion? Most mature human beings have the intellectual capacity to wonder about this, though only some actually use this capacity to try to work it out. And that is fine. Not everybody needs to or should be a philosopher. Society also needs people to do other things like cook, farm, make machines, teach, or trade. There, however, have been a valuable culture and tradition where people have thought very hard about things, and they or their students have written their ideas down. If not, we will not know about the content of their thoughts. And so we learn from them and try to understand what they had to say. But they do not have the last word. The kinds of questions that are being tackled by philosophy do not abide final words. It is not that the questions cannot be answered. There are answers, but whether these answers are right, universal, and suitable for every situation remain the subject of debate. We may also have competing answers, and then how should we decide? I want to take a leaf from Martin Heidegger. He said that being is not a thing, but should be understood as a verb. Being is to be. It is about actions. Similarly, philosophy is not a thing, not merely a subject to read or even to learn about. It is an act. A philosopher is not someone who knows philosophy. Knowing is not enough. She is one who philosophizes. She is the one loving the wisdom. Love is not a static thing that is put in a museum or a book to be looked at, admired, or read. Love is the act of loving. Someone else cannot love on your behalf, just like how someone else cannot eat, sleep, live, or die on your behalf. That person can love, but that love is from that person doing the loving. That person can live, but that life is that person doing the living. That person may die, but that death is not you dying, but that person. To love something is to be the one loving, to be the lover. Socrates cannot love wisdom for you. He loves wisdom. He philosophizes. His act is his act. In his act of philosophizing, his students, such as Plato, had recorded it down, and we can read what Plato wrote. But that is just reading. Reading philosophy is not philosophizing. Philosophizing is philosophizing. Just like when one reads a great work of fiction, say Fyodor Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov, that is reading. Reading is an essential part of learning to write and to think, but reading alone will not make one a writer or a thinker. If you want to be a writer or thinker, you have to write. You have to think. Of course, one is also thinking while reading, but what I mean is that we have to do our own thinking. Just like listening to a record of music or watching a movie can be enjoyable and we can be deeply moved, but that is not the same as being a musician, an actor, or a filmmaker. Once again, we do not need everyone to be a musician, actor, or filmmaker. Only those interested enough should do it. They may succeed, they may not. Interest is only a minimum prerequisite. For those not interested, there is no reason for them to do it. They can participate in the sense of listening to the music or watching the movie, but that compared to making the music or movie is passive. I believe that philosophizing, is an active act. Other people's philosophizing acts on us. That is us playing the passive role, but we must also act on it to make it a true act of philosophy. What does act mean in the context of philosophy? Philosophy is not about creating a physical artifact like a machine or a building, but it is about creation nonetheless. Creating a work of philosophy, just like how an artist creates a piece of art or a composer a piece of music. To me, philosophy is to philosophize. It is all good and well to read the works of the great thinkers, attend lectures, study, learn, and research, but finally it is to philosophize. It is to carry out the act of philosophizing, to think with and through those other thinkers. It is what Descartes invited us to do in his meditations, to personally undergo along with him his radical skepticism in order that we may really understand what he is trying to do. So reading also has an active element. How I look at it is how art students learn how to draw. First, by imitating other artworks. It is a preparation, but for what? The aim is not to remain an eternal student, an eternal imitator. At one point, the artist, in order to be a true artist, has to develop his own style, his own works. For the philosopher, I think it is analogous. We learn from other thinkers, we read them, that is something we will continually do, but we also have to finally try to figure things out for ourselves, to think our own thoughts. Just like a chemist needs to learn a lot of chemistry, a philosopher also has to learn a lot of philosophy. But a chemist only becomes a chemist by doing chemistry, by working seriously with those chemicals. What do philosophers work on? Ideas. That involves working with already existent ideas, concepts, and theories that others have come up with, but also to come up with one's own ideas and theories. I'm not saying that it is solipsistic. A philosopher does not just think in a vacuum. By just existing, he is already in a context, already in the world with other people and things. He is influenced by the thoughts of others, by his environment, by what is going on around him, and by the physical world acting on him, and him acting on and in it. But not every act of a philosopher is philosophy. A philosopher also has to do all the things that others do, like eat, clean, go to school, work a job, take the bus, drive, cycle, walk, cook, shower, etc. But in addition, he philosophizes. Some of this philosophizing will revolve around the everyday acts he has to do, like eating and walking, such as how the nature of our physical bodies affects how we understand the world. Some of this philosophizing will have little or nothing to do with the everyday, such as considering the nature of reality or contemplating what it means to know something. Philosophy is hence a personal act with outward-facing dimensions. It is not unique in that way. I spoke earlier about musicians and artists. An artist is someone who creates art. His art is influenced by the art of others and also the world and all sorts of external influences, but they are all just influences. Finally, it is the artist who has to draw the drawing, paint the painting, decide on the subject, the colors, the brushes, and the medium. But even if not one single person other than the artist himself ever sees that painting, that artist is still an artist insofar as he created that piece of art. He may not be a good artist, an influential artist, an important artist, but he remains an artist no less. But just because one may not be famous or celebrated in one's lifetime does not mean that one will necessarily forever remain unimportant. Think of Vincent van Gogh, who sold very few pieces of his art in his lifetime. Think of Johann Sebastian Bach, who was a virtual unknown until Felix Mendelssohn serendipitously discovered his works in an organ seat and popularized him over half a century after his death. If somehow Van Gogh or Bach knew that they would not be commercial successes in their lifetimes, would they not have painted or composed? Who knows? Maybe they would do it as a hobby after their day jobs. Or not quite as a hobby, but as a serious endeavor, though they have to support themselves with day jobs. The way Benedictus de Spinoza did, grinding lenses while carrying on with his philosophizing, or Charles Bukowski as a postman while carrying on with his writing. What I do think, though I cannot know for sure, is that while external validation and commercial success may be pleasing or welcomed for them, they also had some satisfaction doing the work for its own sake. I'm not saying that it was pure ecstasy from start to end. I imagine that they may have struggled to come up with their ideas, felt frustration or anxiety at their progress, inadequacy towards their abilities, wondered when they would succeed if at all, or fought their self-doubt. Even the act of putting pen to paper or brush to canvas may have been agony. What I suspect though is that they could hardly have helped themselves but to do the art, write the book, compose the music, or philosophize. The reason I'm confident in saying this is because if they gave up at the first sign of difficulty or at the prospect of failure, they would never have made it. We may be inert to the image of the child prodigy, whose first words were already pure poetry, whose first time playing the piano was already heavenly, who sat in front of the chessboard for the very first time and was already conquering, or at least taking to their talents like a fish to water. I am not so sure that those are true, or at least complete accounts. I think the reality is more like the way a baby gets up to walk but falls over. While the baby is likely to have an easier time with self-doubt than adults, not having learned that emotion yet, the baby also cannot help but try, and try, and try. It is in the baby's nature. I think the true artist, musician, or philosopher is something like that. They cannot help but to draw, compose, perform, or philosophize. Is that why it is called love? Thank you for listening to the Philosophical Bachelor.